Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for another episode, the Life by Design podcast. And yours?
And mine. And the BizShoes podcast.
BizShoes. We're doing a double again. We've got Shani Timms.
And we've got Worrall Thompson coming in hot.
Coming in hot from the pod Byron. Guys, get around this place. If you're near Byron, our mate Togger runs it. Get around it.
If you're watching the visuals, you'll see the vibe.
You'll see the visuals.
It's elite.
Epic. This is the new standard, guys. We could talk about Togger for hours on end,
which
but we
will.
won't.
Oh no,
today.
we won't.
We won't. No, we're going to change. Cancel it. We're taking it in a different direction, guys. We are recording a couple of episodes. We haven't done one for a while. Have we done one this year?
I don't know if we've done one this year. The last one was kind of like midway through pregnancy, I think. Little update. Yeah,
so
we've got so much to catch up on.
There's a bit that's happened since then.
Yeah.
We're going to do a couple of episodes. This first one will be around the back end of pregnancy into the birth. And then the next one we will talk postpartum and answer your questions. We had some great questions come through on socials. So let's start with pregnancy, mainly the back end.
What Blake's calls, what do you call it? Semester 3.
Semester 3. I wasn't very good at school, as you guys know.
No, which if you've had a baby, you know it's not that.
It's not that.
trimester 3.
Yeah, don't listen to me. I've got no idea what I'm talking about. But we will start with trimester 3.
Yeah.
Rolling into birth. And let's kick off with a couple of the challenges which you handled with such grace in that whole pregnancy process, and even start with the 4 changes that we had to make before we finally landed on a hospital.
So it's kind of funny, and I think if you chat to anyone who's had a baby, they're like, you have your birth plan and then you throw it out the window and the baby's plan takes over. And since the beginning, I've always said, I'm like, I know our baby, Frankie, now, she's obviously got a name, is going to guide us to where she wants to be born. And we both had the intention of having a home birth at the start, and we went through the Byron midwifery practice. I think it's called the practice or whatever, or program, sorry. And so we had signed up and we were going to do a home birth. And then it was probably, I think it was the start of trimester 3 that we ended up finding out that we've got gestational diabetes, which was quite a whirlwind because I didn't want to do the test. I didn't want to have to go down that path of like drinking, the glucose, pretty much syrup and all that. But I just had this weird inkling that, mother's intuition is off the charts, especially in pregnancy. I just had this weird intuition that something wasn't right, and that I did think that I had gestational diabetes, because I kept on watching, these videos on Instagram, and like they would be all these ones about gestational diabetes. And anyway, so I just had to trust the niggle. And I remember getting tested and saying, I get my blood tested, which is something if you don't want to do the glucose drink, you can just get a fasted blood test in the morning. And then I self-tested my glucose levels at home using like a finger prick monitor for 2 weeks. Anyway, one look at the results, and my midwife was like, look, you have gestational diabetes. And to be honest, like you said, that I handled it gracefully. Like I was a mess that day. Like, I think I was grieving so much. I was grieving like getting diabetes when I'm like the healthiest person ever. And we know now that it has nothing to do with health. Well, a little bit, but not too much to do with health. And also just grieving the birth plan that we had. So with this program, if you had any sort of higher risk things such as gestational diabetes, you couldn't birth at home. You had to come into the hospital. So that was the first leap, the first change.
Well, you could, but you just fell in, like we could do whatever we want really, but you just fell into a higher risk category.
Yeah, but you couldn't, if we wanted to stay with the Byron midwife program.
Yeah.
If you wanted to birth at home with GD, you would have to get a private midwife, which I was like, I just feel, when I was tapping into the energy of what was happening, I was like, I just feel Frankie's guiding us into hospital. So I was like, look, we could go and hire a private midwife and all this stuff, but it felt like too many changes and it just didn't feel right in my system. And I remember the whole time you were just saying like, just do whatever you're feeling, do whatever you're like intuitively feeling. So that was the first jump. We were going to go to the Byron Hospital and birth in the birth suites there. And then the next jump happened when, we were trying to control the diabetes just by food alone. and I think this is such a funny part to chat to, right, is like we were in the hospital meeting with the diabetes educators and it was so bad. They pull out this food plan and like they were like, okay, so for breakfast, you're going to have 2 pieces of whole grain toast. You're going to have a glass of orange juice. You're going to have, I'm like, I don't even eat that anyway. And then they were saying for after dinner, have a glass of Milo and a piece of whole grain toast with peanut butter. And I'm like, you know, my dad's got diabetes type 1. I know, you know, I've had issues with blood sugars in the past. Like I have been educated on what raises your blood sugar and what doesn't. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure a glass of Milo is going to do it. I'm pretty sure 2 slices of whole grain toast is going to do it. So
did we see ice cream somewhere on one of the?
I'm pretty sure there was just some really rogue suggestions. Like, and if you're going in there not knowing anything about health or diabetes, let alone diabetes, and the nurse is telling you to eat this, of course you're going to eat this.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that we knew otherwise. And my midwife, Tori, from the Byron Midwife program, she was freaking incredible.
She's
like
excellent.
she was in the system, but also she thought the same way that we did. And she was like, look, just have a look at this lady called Lily Nichols. She's a registered dietitian and she specializes in gestational diabetes. And I remember like looking at her stuff and straight away I resonated. She was like, you know, you don't need to go fully keto, but like eating a keto diet's not going to raise your blood sugars. The risk with GD is that you have really high blood sugars and then you end up having a bigger baby because like the baby's growing at a faster rate. And there's other, you know, risks for the baby's health, for the mum's health. You know, they might have big shoulders, like all the sort of flow-on effects. So it didn't make sense to me to be eating things that were going to raise my blood sugar. Anyway, I was eating like very low carb, no sugar, like, you know, high protein, all of it. Amazing, incredible, you know, nutritious diet. And still like my blood sugars were just like really, really high. So in the end we had to go on to insulin, which was not what I wanted to do, but in the end it actually ended up being the best thing. It could mean that I could have like a little bit more freedom with what I was eating. And in my research, it was just better than going on the metformin drug because the metformin drug, yes, it helps bring your insulin level, so it helps with your insulin production and everything and brings your blood sugars down, but it passes the placenta wall into the baby. And I was like, I just don't want to do that. So in the end, we were injecting, I say we, me and Frankie, injecting, you weren't, but you were there, like 4 times a day and testing our bloods probably like 5 times a day. I had a CGM as well. So that was a whole journey in itself. And like, I think there's so much, if anyone's going through GD, just message me because we just learned so much on the process and like what they tell you in hospital to do. Again, this is not medical advice. This is just lived experience, what worked for us, is very different to what we did and like what worked. And I'm glad we didn't follow their diet because, you know, Frankie, when she was born, she was like 4 kilos and I'm like that. Imagine if we'd had a high, you know, high sugar, high carb diet for all that time, it would have been crazy. So that was the next hurdle. And as soon as I went on insulin, it meant that we jumped up another category of risk, quote unquote risk. Yeah. So that meant we could no longer birth at Byron and we had to move into a bigger hospital. So they sent us to Tweed. And I remember like calling you after the Tweed. I had the first meeting at Tweed and it was the biggest fuck around. Like they didn't even know like where I was meant to go. I was by myself because you were in Melbourne or Sydney or something. Yeah. And I just remember sitting there at the hospital, tears streaming down my face, being like, 1, I feel like a number here. 2, this is such a big hospital. It felt like such a big drive from our house. It felt like we went into the city and like, you know, I think when you're having a baby, you just want to be almost like in a cave-like environment. And this felt like it was so big and bright. And I just got into the car, I called you and I just bawled my eyes out and I was just like, I cannot birth at Tweed. And like, I'm sure people have had great experiences at Tweed, but again, tapping into my mother's intuition, I was like, that's not where we're meant to birth. So I called Tori, our midwife, and I was like, is there any chance you can get us in at Lismore? Like I just have this feeling we're meant to be at Lismore. And anyway, she called and then bang, we're in at Lismore and it just felt like everything was just go, go, go. Like I just think Frankie in the end wanted us at Lismore because like it was like the doctors called straight away. They booked us in. When we went there, I just felt so at home and it just felt like the right flow. Is that the 4 hurdles? Like I don't know what I'm up to.
Well,
but
there's a few.
and then there's later on there's a few more hurdles.
Well, there's a number of hurdles. Those that know us will know that we prefer to be out of the system, especially the medical system. But what we learnt and what we continue to learn is just how to dance with it. Some of the advice that we got, which Shani gave a really good example around food, is a disgrace in terms of what they recommended. And I remember looking at a pamphlet that they gave us and like Milo and ice cream and whole grain bread. I'm like, this is fucking rubbish. Yeah. And then, just to kind of have a bit more of a laugh, I remember going and sitting in the waiting room and they offer you snacks, of which it was like tiny teddies or something.
It was the
like,
Arnott's biscuits.
Yeah. Like, don't offer any
funny.
food if you're going to offer that shit.
Yeah,
so it was a good dance, and I think you probably found peace in that before I did, in terms of just honouring the fact that we had to dance with the system. But to your point, when we moved to Lismore, overall it was an excellent experience, and we'll go into the birth in a sec. But we still did have challenges in terms of what we wanted to do and our belief system, and essentially what the doctors, maybe obstetrician, a couple of those people, the language that they use, in hindsight I probably wish I said something, but talking about if you want your baby to live, this is what you need to do. While Shani's pregnant and Frankie's naturally in her stomach picking up on some of this language. But overall, if you zoom out, it had its challenges, but I think as a witness to a lot of it, which sounds very helpless and hopeless, but I kind of was, you handled that well, in terms of changing hospital. If someone said, we changed hospital 4 times or we changed our birth plan 4 times, people would be like, what the fuck? That's manic. But, other than the kind of the tweed one that got you really good, it was just a case of like having flexibility and adaptability to kind of navigate the changes.
And even if you think from the start, I remember us like before pregnancy, we're like, we're not going to have any scans. We're going to have a home birth and like all this stuff. And then in the end, I think we ended up having to have 4 scans.
Yeah.
But like that actually gave me so much peace of mind. Like the fear that they instill in you is like, and I'm literally going to have tears in my eyes now. Like when you are heavily pregnant and they're saying that your baby, like if you don't do this, your baby might die, like is outrageous. And it's like, all along, the fear that they instilled, I was like, is she growing okay? Like there was so much heightened fear. Like every morning I would be like holding my belly being like, is she okay in there? Did she make it through the night? Like is there something that's going on? And like honestly, when she came out and she was so healthy, a perfect weight, like, her blood sugars were so stable. Like I can't remember what she scored on that test, but it was like perfect scores on the test. And then it's like, just the relief that came over, like, knowing that she was a healthy baby and knowing that everything that we did throughout pregnancy, despite the like, fear mongering and like, look, I get it. I think in the end, this journey has allowed me to see the health system for what it is and the amazing things that it does, and probably also like where it lacks. Like I understand
which isn't news to us.
Yeah. But I understand that like a nurse telling me this, like she's doing her job. She's ticking a box on her checklist. She has to say what she has to say. So I understand that. But then this is why I love working with someone like Anna Murray, who, we've probably shout out to like the end of times. So she is a doula in Byron, and she's also was our birth coach. That's why I think it's so important having people like Anna who know how to help families in the system, but then also help them have a voice within the system. Because it's like if we didn't have her, we had so many medical things thrown at us that we had absolutely no idea. And we'll get into that when we talk to the birth story. But like having her on our side to be like, just think about what's your intuition saying here? Like, is this a yes or is this a no? Or just having another way to navigate the system that isn't actually following everything that they tell you to do in the system. So yeah, far out. Like there's just seeing Frankie when she came out, you can see the photo of me after birth. I close my eyes and it's the deepest breath of like, she's alive and she's breathing and she's here and she's healthy and like, I'm okay, like far out. Like that in itself was like the biggest healing thing.
It's wild to think because obviously before the coaching space, I was in the health and fitness space for 15 years. And well before the last 5 years of COVID and vaccines and all this shit that's kind of blown up, I've had a lot of question marks over the medical system. So this isn't new to me. I feel like probably in 2003, I really started to make sense of it with a guy called Paul Check when I studied him back, 22 years ago. So like what has become more apparent over the last 5 years with more people asking questions around the medical system and, certain vaccines, etc., isn't news to me, has just strengthened the case that we have. But even with my background and Shani's deep kind of research and pretty much exactly the same beliefs around the medical system, and, Shani said the ways in which they do things well and the ways in which they're very questionable, even as grounded as we were in our knowledge and our understanding and having Anna as a support, there are still a number of occasions where they would say things and we just have like little moments of second guessing ourselves or second questioning, which for me in part angers me, and also there's heartbreak in thinking mothers in particular, but families and couples who aren't empowered in their decisions through lack of knowledge or through lack of support would be rattled through this process. And yeah, it infuriates me. It doesn't feel like it's my fight to fight, but I'm glad there's a number of people fighting that fight. And Anna Murray again is one of those people who just gave us more confidence in really what we already knew, but just a way to navigate it. And we would have been even more rattled without her as well.
Don't you think it was like the perfect birth though for both of us? Like I think like birth is such an initiation for us as a family and individuals as well. But it's like if you had told us, 2 years ago that was our birth, we would have laughed because we're like, oh no way, whatever. But I just think like, Frankie knew that this birth had to be the way that it was to teach us so many lessons. And I think also for us to like build a bit of harmony with the medical system as well. Like we had so many beautiful experiences in there and also very challenging experiences in there as well. And it helped me rebuild a lot of faith in the medical system in some aspects.
In some ways, yeah.
And also just be okay. Like, fuck, I ended up on so much medication. I ended up on so much insulin, and things that I never wanted to do in my life, but I'm okay. Like, I faced the fear, we faced the fear and we turned out okay and we have a healthy baby. So I think that was really healing in itself.
Well, even the place of acceptance that you had to get to realise that you had GD, because for those that don't know, Shani's nutrition around pregnancy was the most elite nutrition I've ever seen in my life. Like you had a couple of ham cheese toasties and that was the extent of your like
blowouts in
your
trimester one.
And then, we had little moments of, where it just is like, you have those little victim moments where you're like, this isn't fair, which it isn't, but nor is life. But like it was unbelievable to see how well you looked after yourself, and not really from a place of restriction or from a stressful place, just a nurturing, caring for yourself when it came to health. And, everyone's got their own kind of cravings and experience. It just felt like a bit of a stitch up that was the card that we were dealt. But, at some stage you've got to find acceptance in that. And we had a wedding in Feb, I think. And up until this point, Shani hadn't wanted to go on insulin and we were kind of dancing with this. And, we're down at Shani's cousin's wedding and she had just like a small bit of risotto.
Because that was the only thing that they gave
Because the only thing she could really eat. And it just fucking blew her numbers out. And we're like, okay. So as soon as we got back, I think we had a doctor's appointment that week and it started. And again, we were so resistant to that. But that ended up being, one of the pieces that really helped you stabilise your blood sugars and helped us move forward. Because I think at that point or close to that time, Frankie was in the 85th percentile. So she was growing at a rate that could have been scary had you not got on insulin. And then I think when she was born, she was in the 49th percentile or something, wasn't it?
No, because she was 4 kilos. Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, but anyway, she didn't balloon out.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was that, and then there was the
Well, I reckon let's go to the 2 week.
the 2 week
lead up,
which was solid.
Okay, like there is a reason why you don't really see women who are like heavily pregnant about to pop. It is like the biggest initiation chamber, those 2 weeks leading up to pregnancy. Like I had, even though I had, the GD and a few other things pop up in pregnancy, far out. Like that last 2 weeks absolutely challenged the fuck out of me. Like it was insane. Like, so the GD was hard enough. And I noticed in the last sort of 2 weeks of before my due date, I had intense swelling. Like my legs were balloon.
Proper.
And like I don't think I put on any weight. I think I actually lost weight in pregnancy, which is obviously not baby and everything. But my upper body completely fine, like, apart from the belly, but lower body, my legs were the size of elephants. Like it was insane.
That was strong.
It was so
and
strong.
shout out, if anyone knows Shani, she has little small legs. And a shout out to Shani's sister, who is even smaller. And if you ever saw the photos of what happened, it's definitely a family thing that's happened, because the two of them
flew out like balloons.
Proper.
So we got to the stage where me and my sister, so she was due like 5 weeks before me, and we both got to the stage where we couldn't put our runners on, like unless they were literally like the laces were hanging loose. And it just would not go down. Like usually the swelling would kind of go down, overnight, and mine would barely go down. And then the next morning, I honestly couldn't bend my knees. They were that sore.
There's a lot going on.
So, but it was kind of funny because it was just from the waist down, so I could wear pants and kind of get away with it, and it was fine. And then literally bang on the 2 weeks before birth, we'd been really cautious about not seeing too many people and like really being in our bubble. We'd been to the hospital, and then we came home, and then like the next day I started getting this tickle in my throat, and I was like, oh fuck, like I really hope that I'm not getting sick here, because I've heard a few women get sick like right before birth. And I was like, please, I don't want to get sick. And to be honest, being sick is like my kryptonite. Like it just absolutely, I really struggle being sick, and I hate it. And so the universe was like, here you go. Here's a beautiful little test for you. And so I remember getting so sick. Like this is the worst cough and flu that I've ever had. Like there is a photo where my face is entirely red and a balloon, and my eyes are crying. Like my whole face is just blown up. And anyway, so I was probably horizontal on the couch for like a week straight, like just tissues everywhere, so much phlegm coming up. And honestly thinking to myself every day, fuck, I want this to end, but also I don't want to go into birth when I'm feeling this shit, because I had no energy. I was crippling cough that I literally had to, 1, hold my vagina so my vagina wasn't kind of coming out, 2, hold my rib because I felt like I was going to break a rib, and try and brace myself against a wall. And anyway, I ended up fracturing a freaking rib right before birth. Well, in that 2 week lead up to birth, and it was just so painful. Like being pregnant, you can't lie on your back in the later stages. You can't lie on your front for obvious reasons. I couldn't lie on one side from a broken rib, and then the other side was my only side I could sleep on, and I couldn't really get myself in and out of bed. So, sorry, I also want to preface, like in sharing this, just like if you are pregnant or you're, wanting to be a mum, like just know that this is our journey. This is not like a one.
Should we just touch on this now?
Yeah, maybe let's touch on this because like
hold that story, because I think it's important.
Yeah,
so I'll speak for myself and you can speak to it if you want. But I think the biggest lesson and potentially frustration in our pregnancy birth, I'll say ours, but I'm talking about my experience, is the amount of projections that people throw onto you. And one of the things that we've been really mindful of, and Shani just spoke to it, is all that we can do is speak to our pregnancy story, our birth, our postpartum, our parenting experience. And what I noticed when we were pregnant, I don't even know if that's the right language.
I don't know if
that's not the right language, is it?
You
when
look good
Shani
with
was
the belly.
pregnant and I was kind of there somewhere in the vicinity, was how many people told us, oh, this is what pregnancy is like, or this is what birth is like. And it's super sloppy language because that's not factually correct. That's what your experience is like. So in us sharing this is our experience. And please, if you have kids, tighten up on your language speaking to people that don't have kids. And if you don't have kids and you're listening to other people talk about their experience, please be mindful that it's just their experience. It actually really started to piss me off where people were using – can you tell? I'm passionate. It actually really started to piss me off the amount of people that like, oh, this is what pregnancy's like. And realistically, honestly, pretty much no one got it right for our experience. And that's the whole point. It's our experience. And even what people said about parenting, our first, 13 weeks at time of recording has been completely different to just about everyone's bit of feedback that they gave us. So just in us sharing this story and any other stories around pregnancy or parenting, please know this is just our experience.
And I think like as we're sharing the birth story, like I don't want this to incite fear in anyone that like it's going to happen this way. Like this birth was like perfectly curated for you and me and our journey to bring Frankie into the world. And just know your birth is going to be the same in that way. It's going to be perfectly curated for you and your partner and your beautiful baby to enter the world. So what I would do is like take the bits from the story that you find expansive and that you really love and just push everything else to the side, because it's like just because we got diabetes, just because we got preeclampsia doesn't mean that you're going to have that too and go through that. So I'm glad we touched on that, because I don't want this, as we're sharing this story, I don't want it to be like inside, and it's not a fearful story, but I just want people to take the bits of gold that they can from it.
Well, I think before you continue as well, for those who hear GD, preeclampsia, changing the hospital 4 times, that could sound quite traumatic when really you loved your pregnancy experience up until the last 2 weeks.
Even the last 2 weeks, like
it was interesting.
It was interesting, but it's like obviously I didn't love it at the time, but I loved our whole pregnancy journey.
Yeah.
And like before pregnancy, I literally had this belief that like for me to love pregnancy, everything had to go right. Everything had to be good. Everything had to go to plan. Like that was my perception. If I'm going to love pregnancy, that's what's going to happen. But to be honest, nothing went to plan. Like so many shit hit the fan, so many plans changed, and I still loved pregnancy. And like things went quote unquote bad, but I still loved it. So if you can take anything, like take that things don't need to go to plan for you to still love pregnancy.
That's also a skill though that I would say we've got and that you have is it's at the core of it is resilience and adaptability. And that was something that I think a lot of people from the outside looking in, if they are viewing our world, look at the way that we've made systems and behaviours, etc., for the way that we do life by design, essentially. And with that could be a preconceived idea that with a whole bunch of systems in the way that we do life becomes rigidness. But really one thing that we've developed quite well is systems and adaptability. If you're too adaptable, and there's a lot of people that lack boundaries and systems that kind of orchestrate their life, they're just these like flow boys that are all over the place at one end. But if you're too systemized and become rigid, then you lose your shit when you get challenged. So I think that the dance that we've been able to do quite well is, yes, we have done an excellent job of systemizing our life to really kind of optimize it, and at the same time install a level of adaptability for when there are challenges and you do need to pivot. And like anyone who's got kids, this is obvious to them. Like you got to pivot a lot. Even in the 13 weeks that Frankie's been here, we're constantly pivoting and renegotiating and reorganizing our week and who supports and who has time off, etc., like that. So it's just a constant dance, which we'll go into later. But you have had an amazing ability to be adaptable and do it with grace. And yes, like of course you have your moments, but you're able to pivot really quickly as well. So I think that's a skill that everyone should develop, and just something to be mindful as we're dancing through these stories.
I think the thing that got me through that I just knew Frankie was guiding this whole journey. Like, and I know that sounds probably like woo-woo, whatever. That is what got me through. Like, I think that Frankie wanted us, like when I look from hindsight lens, Frankie wanted us in the hospital. Like we obviously needed to go on insulin because she would have been like, a big baby or whatever. Like we needed my nutrition to be in check for her, for me. So it's like when I look through the hindsight lens, I was like, Frankie guided all of this. Like it happened perfectly. So for me to sit there and, bitch and moan and, try and change the fact that I had gestational diabetes isn't going to happen. Isn't going to help,
Doesn't change anything.
Doesn't change anything. But like just the fact that I'm like, I know Frankie's guiding this, I'm just going to trust it and just like lean into it. That is 100% what got me through.
So for those that don't know what preeclampsia is, other than your legs looking like elephantitis.
Yeah, Blake was I remember we tried to have sex. No, we did have sex, which like ended up bringing, I think the mucus plug broke the next day or something. And it was like turning a fucking huge cruise ship.
It was.
It was very challenging.
Shani said some words to me prior to this sex that.
What did I say? I don't remember.
We'll just kind of set the scene. We're like, if we decide we want to take this out, you never heard this bit.
Yeah.
But Shani said something along the lines of, let's pretend it's our first experience. I was like, babe, you've got preeclampsia.
Read the room.
You can barely move. I don't think that is quite fitting.
I was like, let's pretend that we're meeting each other for the first time and we're having sex for the first time. And then Blake's like looking at me being like, your legs look like fucking elephants.
Yeah.
You're heavily pregnant. You can hardly move.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Let's save that role play for another time because now's not the right time.
So funny. I forgot about that.
We tried, but it was.
Oh, it's so funny.
Yeah, I assume every couple probably knows what it's like in those last couple of weeks to have sex, and then if you've got a partner with preeclampsia, a cracked rib, and sickness.
Oh yeah, that's true. It was really the trifecta, wasn't it?
It was.
Oh man,
it was unique. So explain what preeclampsia. I can't even remember the exact language about it.
So preeclampsia is high blood pressure, which then, and again, this is not medical. This is just like whatever. So high blood pressure, which then causes like extreme swelling in the legs and can be like cause a lot of risk for me and the baby. A lot, actually, for me. And so I didn't know at the time that I had preeclampsia, but I just felt like something wasn't quite right. So I've had the cough for 2 weeks. We're nearing the Easter weekend. So this was, I think we ended up having, so on the Thursday night after date night, I think is when we had sex. And then on the Friday, we lost the mucus plug.
That's right, yeah.
And then we'd had induction acupuncture, say that a couple of times, booked in. Because if you don't know, if you have gestational diabetes, they're going to push you to do an actual induction earlier, and they're pushing for other things like, all the medical interventions because they want to get that baby out really quick.
Part of their system.
So they're calling me.
I just want to speak to this quickly as well. So there'll be someone who kind of knows exactly the ins and the outs of why or endless reasons why they'd want to induce you early. But if you zoom out, you got to remember, with all due respect, we're a cog in the system. One of the other reasons that they can want to induce you early, which we found out, was we were due on Easter long weekend, and generally hospitals are shorter staffed on long weekends, so that was another reason that they were kind of considering the induction as well. But just on before you go into your story, one thing, if you're thinking at some stage of kids, one thing, and I can't remember the name of it, I wonder if you can remember the name of it, is there's a really big role for the fella to play in the 9 months pre his partner's 9 months. And that can influence things like morning sickness, preeclampsia. What are the other things?
Gestational diabetes.
So really, I obviously wasn't healthy enough. I'm going healthier next time.
No, but I think a lot had to do with like my because my dad had diabetes too.
Yeah.
So I think that came into play.
Yeah.
But the men's health has a huge role.
Yeah. So if you're looking at a kind of, the next 12 to 18 months, as a bloke, I would get you to think about your role in influencing and impacting your partner's pregnancy. I think more than 50% of a female's morning sickness is related to the man. So just a few things to kind of keep in mind, and definitely do your own research. I haven't got the exact numbers, but we saw a couple of pieces around that as well.
So back to the birth story.
Back to the birth story.
So a little hack, and don't tell our midwives or the hospital this, but our original date was the 18th of April, like our actual due date,
right, yeah.
quote unquote due date, guest date, more like it. And we told everyone in the hospital that it was actually on the Sunday because we were like, we just wanted a bit of a buffer up our sleeve, because I'm like, you know, as soon as we moved into hospital, I was like, no, our due date's the 20th, not the 18th. And they're like, oh, sorry about that, update in the system. So it gave us 2 extra days up our sleeves, which is actually so good, because or else it just, you know, they really put the pump on you in that last week. They're calling most days to be like, you know, we just got to talk about next steps, about induction. And if you're thinking about it, you're trying to get your oxytocin levels high, you're trying to get in your birth bubble, and you're getting called by the hospital every day. Again, I know they're doing their job. And in the end, you ended up fielding a lot of these calls, because I was like, I don't want to speak to another nurse that's going to tell me it's time to induce, you know. So, which is why we went down the natural induction path. So we had booked in with Lexi from Solpin in Byron. Right. So shout out Lexi. So we booked in with her on the Friday to do an induction acupuncture. So I went in, had that, and she's like, if you don't hear anything by Sunday, Easter Sunday, she's like, come over, come to my house and I'll do it for you. And then we'll hopefully speed things up again. But at that stage, like, I'd started to feel a few sort of light contractions, like nothing, there was no regularity between them. What I thought was my waters breaking little bits actually wasn't that at all, which we'll touch on later. But mucus plug definitely lost on like the Friday. And so we got to Easter Sunday. We didn't really have any plans. I think we were just cruising. We went to Bangalore. You know, we saw Lexi at home. She gave me another round of induction acupuncture, which was so beautiful to have me in her home and do that. And I remember that we got home that day, or is this the Monday? No, I think it's we got home that day. And I was just like laying in bed, and this stage I was fucking over it. Like I was like, my legs were ginormous. My belly was so heavy. Like just, I felt so just over this. The rib was hurting, all of it. And I remember like just sitting there being like, fuck, I'm just ready to go. And I'd built a really strong intuitive connection with Frankie in that last trimester. I'd been sitting in tea, cloud hidden in Byron, probably like 2 or 3 times a week, every week for that last trimester. And so I felt like I could really communicate with her and just intuitively feel into, you know, what she was saying, all that. I don't know if that sounds really woo-woo, but whatever. Roll with it. And so I remember sitting there, we'd gotten back from Bangalore, and I was just like, I'm fucking over this. I'm like, Frankie, like, what do you need? And it just kept, like, she just kept on saying hospital, hospital, but like not in an urgent way. It was just giving me like.
Let's speak to that quickly.
Okay.
Because that's a really good point. So what you just said is not in an urgent way. And what I'd get you guys to consider when it comes to intuition tends to be like a light ping. There isn't an urgency in intuition often, because what people often confuse is like intuition with a feeling, or, it might be fear or, any kind of feeling. And big emotions are very different to intuition. Intuition is just this light ping and this knowing, as opposed to big feelings. So that was one of the things that I didn't say too much at the time, but I was mindful for you of like, okay, what feels like it's got big energy, which, could be confused for intuition, and what is just like that deep knowing. And I was trying to just ground you. I haven't even said this to you.
Yeah.
I'm saying it to you now. I was trying to ground you, in that last couple of weeks, so that you could just distinguish the difference between those two. So I'd get, those of you ladies to just be really mindful of what is that deep knowing, that deep intuition, and what might you be confusing intuition with some kind of bigger emotion.
Yeah. And I was putting it through my filter, because I was like, is this just fear? Like, it's so natural to have so much fear come up close to birth. So I was like, is this fear that I need to go to hospital, or is this actually, Frankie saying that we need to go to hospital? And I remember saying it to you, and I think you called Anna, and Anna just said, why don't you guys just go to hospital, get a little checkup because we hadn't had one in a couple of weeks, and then you can come home afterwards. And we were like, okay, let's just do that. So we packed the car because we're like, in case we have to stay there or contractions start, let's just have the car packed and ready to go. And so we went to hospital, and I just kept on having this feeling that like, Frankie, she just wants to be close to hospital, and then things are going to sort of speed up. So we went into hospital, and, the midwives are great at Lismore. They were amazing. And anyway, the midwife was like, look, Frankie's fine. You're not. Your blood pressure's through the roof. And this is when we found out we had preeclampsia. And we say, wait, I'm looping you into this. Yeah, I had preeclampsia. And anyway, so onto high blood pressure medication we go. And so I think I was on labetalol. And I remember they gave me quite a lot at the start, and I felt really like spaced out. Like it was almost like too much. I think it dropped my blood pressure too low. Anyway, we found a little sweet spot, and they were like, we suggest you stay in overnight. And we both looked at each other and we're like, okay, well, is there a room available? And the lady was like, oh, look, there is, but it's a shared room. Blake won't have a bed. He'll be sleeping in a chair. And we both thought, nah, I don't think tonight's the night. Like, let's go home, have a really good sleep. And like, this is the thing I think, we can tend to get caught up in like, oh my God, is this a contraction? Is this a contraction? And one of Anna's best advice was like, ignore the contractions, sleep, rest until you cannot ignore the contractions. So we went back home, we had beautiful dinner, we had a sleep, and then we said to the hospital we'll be back in the next day. So next day, which by this stage was
Monday, wasn't it?
Monday, yeah. And we had a massage at Kiva Spa. Well, I had a massage at Kiva Spa. And then I remember in the massage like feeling some contractions sort of starting, and like very, very light, but definitely like there was movement happening. And the massage lady was like, I'm going to like massage induction points for you as well, just to like get things going. And I remember on the way to the hospital, I said to you, I was like, I know if they asked us to stay tonight, Frankie's going to come. Like we have to stay in tonight because she is going to come. She just wants to be close to hospital. And again, it was that intuitive feeling of just like, I just know it. And anyway, so we get back into hospital. They've got a bed, proper bed for you, a proper room for us. And we're like, yeah, let's stay. So anyway, I remember both of us just kind of like sitting in the hospital room. We had Uber Eats. We were eating our like fish and sweet potato. And I just had this like real peaceful knowing that like tonight was the night. So we both went to sleep. I woke up at 1 a.m. and like contractions were on. We were like, we're cooking with gas here. And the thing with preeclampsia is it will really speed up things with birth, which is a positive, but also it can get really intense really quick. So it was pretty much like 12 hours of active labor. So it was like we started at 1 a.m. and then she was born at 1:18 a.m. That day. So it was kind of cool, just like, it was literally 12 hours. So we were in the general ward, and I was like breathing through my contractions, and you jumped into bed with me, and we're just trying to again like rest as much as we could. I think we tried the TENS machine, which I actually didn't like the TENS machine at all. It was so annoying. It was like, I was like, this thing's meant to help you, and I'm like, I'm trying to freaking press the buttons, and like I was like, whatever, get this thing off me. And then they really started to sort of speed up. What do you think at this stage? Like it was probably 9 a.m. 45 seconds apart?
Yeah, I reckon somewhere between 8 and 9.
Yeah. And so they were 45 seconds apart, 60 to 90-ish long maybe.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I want to get in the birth pool. Like all along, I fucking wanted a water birth. I'm like, get me in that water. I need to be surrounded by some warm water. And anyway, they were like, oh, sorry, we're just making up the room. Like someone's still birthing in there. We've got to change the sheet. Or I don't know, whatever. I was just like, get me in the freaking pool. And it literally it was this weird feeling of like, I literally could feel my pelvis opening. Like it was like this vibration feeling, like almost like electric vibration feeling. I could feel my pelvis opening. And I was like, get me to the birth suite now. I just want to be there. I think, how many contractions do you reckon I had between the ward and the birth suite?
3 or 4, do you reckon?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I was thinking 3. Yeah. Because we were moving so slowly.
And it's literally, we're on the same floor. It would be 50 metres to the other side where the birth suite was.
And it was like, it just hurt to walk. And like, I don't know why they didn't put me in a wheelchair, to be honest. But like, I remember walking and it was I had my Frankie Gelato hat on.
That's right.
And then I had my blue blocker glasses on. And we were just walking and I couldn't make eye contact with anyone. I was just like, get me in there now. Anyway, get in the birth suite and I'm like, sweet, run the bath. Like, let's get this going. And they're like, oh, sorry, we actually can't do a bath for you because you are too high risk. And I was like, what the fuck? I'm like, one thing I wanted in this birth, I just wanted a warm bath. And yeah, because they had to have me strapped up to all these different monitors and machines and everything. And I was like, can I please have a shower? And they're like, okay, yeah, can have a shower. And then it just started a relay, right, of us going shower, the birth ball, the bed, maybe on my hands and knees, toilet, shower, and then repeat. And it was just like I likened it to a friend the other day. When you're hungover and you're like trying to find that food that's going to heal the hangover, giving birth is like you're trying to find that position that's going to ease the pain. And it's just like you have to go position, position, position. And oh my God, it was just so funny. So anyway, we're like laboring away and I remember like just being in excruciating pain. Like I was like, there's labor pain, but this feels like next level. It feels like something's going to burst, not in a good way. Like I'm like, is my appendix going to burst? Like something didn't feel right. And fill in any pieces where you think, but I remember turning to you and I was like, something is not right. We need to get her out now. I need a cesarean. And like cesarean was far off my birth plan. A
lot that wasn't unfolded in a 4-hour period was off the birth plan.
A lot. So I remember turning to you and then anyway, your face was just like, okay, fuck. And then do you want to take over this bit? Because this is where I go blank.
Yeah. So there was probably about a 4-hour period that it was really busy. I think I counted, and I can't remember them all off the top of my head. We'll probably roll with them. But I think probably 9 or 10 attempted interventions in a 4-hour period. And my fear, so one of the best things Anna said was, Blake, you're the gatekeeper. And I would recommend that to every single bloke on planet Earth, to be the gatekeeper so that your partner can stay in their process, where they're doing it alone, where they're doing it with a midwife, etc. And I was like, awesome. That's great. And there's a part of me that was freaking the fuck out because I'm like, I know how they operate in terms of their urgency. And my biggest fear was, how do I distinguish what is actually urgent and what is just them bringing the urgency on? And she said, if it's really urgent, they'll press the emergency button, doors will fly open and shit will kind of move. But they still came in with a lot of urgency to the point where I still had a number of challenging moments going, is this real? What do we do here, etc. So one of them was cesarean. What was the other option with cesarean?
No, I think it was
epidural.
Yeah, epidural. Well, you have to have an epidural if you have a cesarean.
There was another option out of cesarean and something else. What would it have been?
No, because I was like, I want a cesarean now.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Well, then they were like, can we check your waters?
Yeah.
Is that what you mean? Is that what you're thinking?
there was another option. So
yeah,
I think probably on average for somewhere between a 4 and a 5 hour period, these guys would have been coming in every 30 minutes. There was the cesarean. There was talk of increasing your medication for your blood pressure.
Oh, the scalp probe or something.
There was a scalp probe.
For Frankie.
There was blood transfusions. There was then there was kind of the forceps, and the vacuum, it just continued. And there was different other medications as well.
And it was like a rotating door of like doctors coming in, nurses coming in, and I'm there on my hands and knees, like naked, primal screaming, and like they're shoving a form in front of my face saying, can you sign this form so then we can get you cleared for cesarean, because they're all scrubbing up. And I'm like, can you pass it to Blake? I can't even see right now. They're like, no, we need you to sign it. And I'm like, what the fuck? Anyway, I'm just there signing, being like, I don't fucking care, whatever.
The lack of I know they're doing their job, but the lack of emotional intelligence amongst the midwives are the greatest people to ever walk this planet.
Yeah,
the doctors are a very different story. So I would have said 4, 5, maybe 6 times, guys, outside, we're not having this conversation in front of Shani. And they would continue to fucking have the conversation in front of Shani. And at times, mid-contraction, ask Shani questions. I'm like, are you a fucking idiot? Look at her. She's mid-contraction.
Yeah.
Just wait. So there was an occasion where I was told that the waters hadn't broken. And I think it was a midwife that I was speaking to. She's like, do you want to tell Shani or do you think that'll kind of unsettle her? And I was like, okay, well, I think it's going to unsettle her, but let's just see. And then it got to a point where you're like, something's not right. And I was like, okay, I think this is.
Do I tell her now?
I think this is where I probably should say something. So it ended up being that her waters weren't broken, and without knowing what the female anatomy, essentially it feels like something was pushing against your waters and making it impossible.
Well, it's like an unstoppable, like imagine like your whole body and apparently this is actually quite common that you can be like very in labour and your waters haven't broken.
Yeah. So you tell that bit maybe.
So it was like, one, I was losing a lot of blood, like, you know, every contraction I was kind of like having blood come out. And that's when they were like, oh, you know, if she loses much more blood, we're going to have to chat about a blood transfusion, which was a big no for me. I didn't want to do a blood transfusion.
Yeah.
And it was just like this like hectic
Do you
pain.
want to explain why? You don't have to go into that much detail.
Oh, just like one, with blood transfusions, you can't actually figure out if it's been an unvaccinated or vaccinated blood.
Which is our main reason, and each to their own. But like people be like, why wouldn't you want a blood transfusion? That was our main reason, was because we can't monitor what blood we were getting.
Yeah.
The other thing to keep in mind is we don't have a relative point. All right, so when Frank is his name, the irony of it.
I know, isn't that crazy?
He was a nice guy.
The obstetrician.
Had zero emotional intelligence. So when Frank comes and goes, you're losing a lot of blood, I'm like, what is a lot? Because I just have to trust in him, but also being mindful that he's pushing urgency for these changes. And I'm like, fuck, I've got no relative point. Like, I don't know what a lot or a little is. So I'll get you to come back to the water story in a sec. But I had Anna on standby. Shout out Anna Murray again.
On speed dial.
On speed dial. Yeah. Because even though she told me, Blake, if there's an emergency, they'll press the button, the way that they came at me often still had me question whether these were emergencies. So when he says, oh, there's a lot of blood, and then it's like, well, how much? I'm like, well, I don't fucking know. I'm not on the ground like counting how many litres. So I think I took a picture and she said, oh, it's a bit, but it's not like, you know, kind of life-changing. So all of these little markers and little points kind of just had me challenged. But the other ones were quite easy to make decisions. Well, a lot of the other ones were easier to make decisions. But we were adamant that you didn't want a blood transfusion unless it was literally life or death.
But this was the point where you thought that you were going to lose Frankie and me.
So I think this was probably maybe the 6th intervention, this blood transfusion, because there was talk of medication, there was talk of putting something on Frankie's head to monitor, like all these things. So when it came to the blood transfusion, like I found a way up until this point to ground myself, to go outside with the midwife or go outside with Frank and just have a conversation, albeit, God bless that man again, he would use language. I'm like, mate, fucking don't, like, talk simple to me because you're talking language I don't understand. And he'd just continue to make the same mistake time and time again. So when it came to the blood transfusion, not only did he come in for this one, 3 other doctors came in. And he came to me, one of the doctors went to Shani, and I'm trying to protect Shani while I'm trying to push off Frank. Not physically, but I got pretty close to pushing him physically. And then I just lost it. I lost control of the moment, and I've never gone into such a survival state where I'm trying to keep Shani calm. I'm trying to fend off Frank. And I'm trying to fend off these people that are talking to Shani, of which Shani's now freaking out finally after the 6th intervention. And she's like, I want this baby out. I want this baby out. I'm like trying to ground myself. And in this moment, the most, like, I thought I was going to lose Shani and Frankie. So while I'm trying to remain calm, I get behind Shani so she can't see me. And at this point, literally in the space of 3 seconds, I've got to a place where I'm completely drenched in sweat, like the most chronic survival mode I've ever experienced in my life, and starting to feel dizzy. So I'm kneeling down behind Shani, trying to keep one hand on her so she knows that I'm still there, trying to get the guys to fuck off and get out of the room. And it probably took me, it felt like 30 minutes. It could have been 30 seconds, but enough time just to ground myself and come back to the conversation and get everyone out. And eventually somewhere between the 8th and the 10th intervention, Frank finally got the point of outside Frank, because I didn't want to have any of the conversations in front of you because for obvious reasons. And then finally the 10th, somewhere between the 8th and the 10th intervention.
It was attempted intervention.
Attempted intervention. Yeah. We didn't take any of them in the end except for the last one.
Yeah.
So by the end, we got to a place where I went outside with Frank and he goes, mate, it's either the forceps or the vacuum.
Wait, we have to go back to the waters breaking first.
Okay, go back to the waters.
This is people are like they're gonna have like the mind map being like, wait a minute. So we will get back to the forceps at that point. I think I also just wanted to take a moment and just come back to just you holding the space that you did for me and Frankie. Like the amount that you prepared for this birth was unlike any other dad that I've seen. And I don't know, maybe I haven't seen many dads, but you had a 10-page Blake's birth plan. So we had the family birth plan and you had a 10-page Blake's birth plan. And it was literally it was like the gatekeeper of the oxytocin. And it was just like the amount that you put in. Yeah, the amount that you put into our birth just gave me so much trust and hope and faith that you've got us. And for a woman to fully surrender into birth, she has to know that her man's got her. And you so had us at every step of the way. For me to still be in my primal hands and knees and just knowing that you were fielding every single conversation and you were fielding every single person coming into that room and just protecting your girls was just obviously I was in my own state, but I could be there because you had us. And that was just the most beautiful thing. And even just seeing you on the phone to Anna, everything that you were unsure of, you weren't pretending to know what you were doing. You were these, my girls' lives are in my hands. I'm getting the support that I need. So yeah, I just wanted to take a moment just to acknowledge you. And I know we've had so many chats about it, but just for how much you prepared for our birth, not just me. And I think if, maybe you should make this an ebook, your birth plan, because it was incredible of just all the things, the ways that you can show up for your partner. And you were always giving me water and just telling me to get through the next contraction and next contraction. And I honestly don't think I would have been able to get through the birth without you there, because it was just there was so many times where I felt giving up and you would just be just focus on the next contraction, or, you would tell and remind me of remember, go back to your mother's blessing and remember all the love that all your girlfriends were sending you. So it was just having you there as our rock, literally got us through. A couple of eyelash pulls. So back to the point where it was okay, I need a cesarean. Something's not right. And Frank said to me, he was can I just check your waters because I don't think they've broken? And you were probably fuck, maybe I should have told her that their waters haven't broken. And anyway, so originally on the birth plan, water internal checks were a big no-no, but I was fuck, at this stage I'm I don't care, just go for it. Anyway, one internal check and he's your waters haven't broken, which is probably why you're feeling this pain. Can I break them for you? And I was I don't fucking care, do it, whatever. So as soon as he broke the waters, it was the most amazing pain relief. It was just, oh my God, I just felt such a relief over my body. And I think I went from 4 centimeters dilated to 7. Yeah. Within 5 minutes. My body was we're on here. And I remember everyone was scrubbed up. You were scrubbed up to go into the cesarean. And I was just cancel the cesarean. No, before that, I look at the midwife and I go, do you think I can do this? And she goes, I think you can do it. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, cancel the cesarean. Like, we're doing this. And then we just went through like, you know, a natural birth. And at this stage, like I didn't through any stage of the birth, but like there was no pain relief. There was no epidural. Like I was just riding every wave of contraction. And at this stage, after my waters broke, the contractions were manageable and they were also further apart. So I think because my body wasn't trying to break the waters, they got a bit more spaced out. And I was like, okay, I can do this. Like this is more manageable. Obviously it hurt like fuck, but it's more manageable. And so we got to like when Frankie was in the birth canal and it was, I think it was a mixture of a few things. One, I was fucking exhausted. Two, I think like having all those people come into the rooms really threw me. So I kind of like closed up a little. I felt like I closed up quite like a little bit, but it was like every time I would push and have a contraction, Frankie would drop down, but then she would like almost like bounce back up again. So we were in that stage where she was in the birth canal for about two hours. And like, I know probably compared to some births, that's nothing, but whatever. For us, it was a while. And I remember I kept on turning to the midwife and I was like, roughly at this stage of birth, like how long have I got? And she's like, I don't know, it could be 5 minutes, it could be 8 hours. And I was like, oh, far out, okay. And she really threw me because she said, at this stage of, you've been in this for 2 hours, we can't let you go much longer in this stage. We need to get Frank back in to talk about other options. And I could just immediately feel my body just tense up. And it is so true. Like when things affect your oxytocin, like it affects your whole body because you think this isn't, I'm not fully safe. And I remember I still had my blue light glasses on and like, you know, we're trying all the different positions, but she just wasn't really budging out of that birth canal. So, Frank had to come in and this is when do you want to talk about the conversation about the forceps and the.
Yeah, we got to the final attempted intervention. And finally, Frank kind of got it in terms of having the conversation outside the room and simplifying it in a way that made it really easy for us to make a decision.
Yeah.
So he's like, mate, I think we're going to have to either go the forceps or the vacuum. And I said, Frank, like in really simple terms, help me break down the pros and cons of each for Shani and Frankie. And he goes, well, the vacuum will be easier on Shani but harder on Frankie, and the forceps will be harder on Shani but easy on Frankie. And for me, that seemed like an easy decision, but I wanted to go in with Shani and check. And I was like, okay, here it is. And she's like, well, let's go with the forceps. So then, we got the forceps up and out, which is quite an interesting process. But
it was the worst because I was like, I don't want to be on my back. Like I want to birth on my hands and knees, but I had to be on my back in the stirrups. Yeah. And he's like, we're also going to have to do an episiotomy as well. So it was like, we had the forceps, episiotomy, and I ended up with a 2nd degree tear. So there was a lot of stitches to happen afterwards. But I remember you were at my left, like, you know, at my shoulder, and this was when I was having to go like literally reach to the depths of my soul to like find the strength to push. Like even with the forceps, even with the episiotomy, like this was the most intense, like, you know, sensations of my life. And I remember just being like, okay, like one push and then you go, the head's out. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, thank fucking Lord. Like, thank you. And then so it was like one more push and like her whole body came out. And it was the weirdest feeling. Like, oh my God, like having her body, like I say slide out. It didn't slide out. I pushed it out, but it was just like the weirdest feeling. And it was funny, like all through the last trimester of pregnancy, I just knew that she was going to come out and she wasn't going to be crying and she was going to be just like eyes open, ready for the world. I actually had a fear that she wasn't actually going to be breathing, but that I worked through that fear. And anyway, she came out and she was not crying. She was just put straight on her belly and eyes were open and just like, Mum and Dad, like I'm ready for the world. Like, let's go. And it was just the most beautiful, beautiful thing. And I think I don't know if I spoke to this on my podcast, but like the reishi baby phenomenon. Have you did it?
You've told me about it.
I actually think that it fucking works. Like if you want a calm, chill baby, like look up the reishi phenomenon. It's like you take reishi mushrooms in the last trimester of your pregnancy, and it like just helps create a really calm, grounded nervous system for your baby. And I think that like played into it. I also think it was like the space that we created in pregnancy as well. Anyway, that was a little side note, but like seeing her come out and just like on my chest, and like she did the little breast crawl, and like she latched on, and we were honestly there for like an hour, and she was just feeding, and just like you were there. And yeah, she did. We asked for all the tests on our chest, which they honored that. And it wasn't till like after an hour or something that they, like, it felt like 10 minutes, but they took her away. And you were with her as well, and they just did some heel pricks and tested her blood sugars and stuff. But like what I said before, having her come out a healthy baby when all along, especially in that last trimester, there's all this fear about you're not going to have a healthy baby, and she's going to be too big, she's going to be this, she's going to have diabetes, you're going to have diabetes. There was just so much fear, and just to have that moment of like she's okay and she's alive and she's well and she's fucking healthy, like, oh, it was the best.
Yeah, I don't know if you had this, but I didn't say too much of it because I didn't want to plant any seeds. But prior to being pregnant, or prior to Shani being pregnant,
you looked great pregnant.
I was never pregnant. I just assumed pregnancy equals happy, healthy birth, and I knew it didn't, but that was just where my head went. And then when you became pregnant, the fears just started kind of creeping in of like, what if things go wrong? Yeah. And part of me probably never allowed myself to fully enjoy the full experience for fear of it being taken away. And that's just, hopefully when we have number 2, that won't be a thing. But I didn't want to daydream too far in advance of what could be and what our life as parents would look like, for fear of like, if I really allowed myself to feel it fully, that if something would be taken away from me. And I've seen that pop up a couple of times. I remember when I first moved to Byron, I had a similar feeling because it was just, I was on a high the whole time. I was like, okay, calm down in case things, go wrong. That was 5 years ago. So yeah, to have her come out happy, healthy, it is a blessing that, many people have got and we've got, and also many people don't get that blessing, and there's challenges that come with that. And, it's such a simple thing to wish for a happy, healthy baby, but it's also not that simple in terms of, what challenges you might have. And, I know we'll talk in the next podcast about the first 12 or 13 weeks, but also so much of that, I don't know the stats. I'm sure there's someone who's got better insights. So much of that is down to you and the way that you carried for the 9 months, and also what we did in terms of our relationship in the home environment. Like, so much happened last year for us in terms of pregnancy and proposals and some, exciting things in our life, but nothing for me compares to the home environment that allowed you to nest in the way that you did, and therefore, in part produce this just incredible being that has been quite smooth for us up until this point. So,
what do you mean up until this point?
Well,
oh, okay.
I don't want to get.
I was like, wait,
I don't want to get ahead
happened?
of myself. But I think, one of the big things for me is I don't want to, with all due respect to my upbringing, I don't want to reproduce my upbringing for Frankie. Yeah. So the ultimate for me is a grounded, safe, trusting, loving environment. And I think she's been able to witness that, through the way that you carried for the 9 months, the way that we've set up the home environment in the first 13 weeks, and the way in which we've exposed her to, just so much love through friends and family. And, she just adds a new element to life, which we kind of knew she was going to, but also in ways that you can't describe. And, I assume every parent feels the same. It's hard to find language sometimes for just how blessed we are to be her parents.
So true. And don't you think it was the wildest thing, like after birth when we're in the hospital, like having her resting on my belly and being like, holy crap, 12 hours ago you were in my belly.
Yeah.
Or even like, 2 hours ago you were in my belly and now you're on my belly and you're here. And it was just so surreal. Like we both, and I think that this is actually common after birth, every time we would close our eyes, we were having full psychedelic visuals, and it was like a psychedelic journey. And so I was like trying to go to sleep and I was like having all these crazy visuals. And it was just so surreal, like sitting there eating dinner that night when, 1 a.m. contraction started, and it was probably like 8 p.m. We were again having our Uber Eats because hospital food is absolutely atrocious.
It's a disgrace.
And we were sitting there just looking at each other. Frankie was sleeping behind and we were like, what the fuck just happened? Like it was a whirlwind. It was such a whirlwind.
Yeah.
And don't you think it's so funny that Frank was our obstetrician? That kind of made me feel more at ease with like, okay, we have to go down this path. Like
The good and the bad of Frank.
the good and the bad. But like, again, I just feel like how funny that Frankie orchestrated all of this. Like this is how it's meant to roll. This is how it's meant to happen.
Let's just, before we wrap this episode up, let's just talk our experience of pros and cons maybe in terms of in the system. I did a post on this not long after we had Frankie, and it had lots of commentary. Naturally, when you kind of question systems, there was a lot of people who resonated with it, and then a lot of people probably on the other side of the fence who were challenged by it. But for us, ultimately, the midwives were the greatest part of the experience. Yeah. Just their humanness, their empathy, their understanding, their care. And ultimately, I'm mindful that, a hospital and a system is a system and that we are just a small cog in it. But they really humanise that experience and make you feel like you're the only one in that moment, which in what is the most powerful and meaningful moment in our lives is probably something that every human would want to feel and experience. So we definitely owe the majority of the goodness in birthing within the system to the midwives. And obviously, at the end of the day, the other doctors and Frank did the job that they needed to do. I just will forever be furious, really, for the way in which it was done. The urgency, the scarcity, the fear mongering, the lack of emotional intelligence, the amount of times that I had to say, let's talk outside this room so Shani can drop in properly, and that they continued to override my request. It was a disgrace, I think, in all honesty, and take it or leave it, but that's my opinion. And I think, one of the questions that we've got for this next podcast is what would you do differently? Between pregnancy, birth, and even postpartum, not a huge amount, but one thing I would do is I would have Anna in there as
100%.
extra support, or someone who's maybe, for you guys, if you're listening, you don't have access to Anna Murray, shout out again.
Yeah. She'll be fully booked for years after
She'll be
this.
booked for years. Just because, I appreciate kind of Shani feeling safe in that journey, but there were times where I felt like I was out of my depth just through lack of knowledge and lack of insight. So that would be one thing that we'd do differently. She would guard the door as if she was a full-time security guard, and she would liaise only with me outside the room, and then we'd make educated decisions from that place. So, outside of that, Liz Moore as a whole was really good, and obviously a lot better for Shani than her Tweed experience. Yeah. But that's our experience. Anything you want to add to that?
I don't think so. Just like I'm so grateful to get to do this with you and get to, journey through the 9 months that we had and have the birth that we had, and then the parenting journey that we've had, and like literally getting to bring Frankie into the world was just like the greatest day and also the hardest day of our lives. Yeah. It's crazy.
On that, as a final note, I think one of the things that has really stood out to me is the best things are hard, and it's interesting. I notice, I've spoken about this a little bit, and I'm really sitting with this just to form it a little bit more, but it's really interesting for a lot of societies. We associate hard with bad or hard with negative. So people's parenting story, and obviously we're going to talk about parenting in the next one, you know, there's negative associations to it, a negative narrative because parenting is hard. Birth was hard, pregnancy, you know, hardish. But at the end of the day, most of our best moments when we leave this planet will have been hard. And for that reason, you know, in part they'll be memorable. And yes, your pregnancy had its moments, your birth had its moments, and what you were able to access in what is so challenging in you know, in particular in a natural birth, is a moment that we will take to our graves as one of the greatest moments of our lives.
100%. And I think what it's unlocked for us, like to go through that together, like it just takes us to a whole new level in our relationship.
Yeah.
And also within myself, like fuck, like when you go through birth,
Yeah.
any birth, like whether it's a cesarean, whether you have epidural, whether you have a natural birth, like it takes you to a new level within yourself.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't know if you feel this, like every time I see a parent in the street, it's just this like subtle nod, like,
yeah,
I see you,
well played.
you know, well played.
Yeah.
And like mums in particular.
Totally.
Yeah.
No bloke could do what you guys do, you know?
No, well, it's
that's
we're
that's
built
the
for
reality.
this. Like in the end, we're built for this, you know. And even like looking at my mum now, like such a deep appreciation for her and what she's been through, and you know, like I think just heart explosions times 10 every single day.
Yeah, I think any bloke who's been in the room to see a birth, just has a newfound appreciation. And even if blokes have got their stuff, you know, which a lot of us blokes have got it, whether it's around women in particular or whether it's around your mum, and for that reason you project it onto women, you can't help but find a new level of appreciation and respect when you see a birth and just honour what a wild, powerful experience it is.
It is. Yeah. We did it. We made it.
That's it. That's a wrap, guys.
Thank you so much, guys.